Okay, you can start, Steve, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Welcome to the August 6, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry. We have a quorum, and I would move that we open the meeting. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, the meeting is open. I just want to say, Dan Poison and Al Hale contacted me just a few minutes ago saying that they have lost electricity and will not be with us tonight. It's been a tough couple days, and I really do want to congratulate the DPW and police department and all the members of the staff in the village, because they've done a great job. But it's been a lot of trees down. It's really been sad. So. Tonight we have an agenda with 10 items on it officially. Let's start with maybe the easy part by item number 1, adopting minutes of the planning board meeting of May 7, 2020. Another terrific job by our clerk. I don't know how she puts these together, but it's a heck of a lot of work. Anybody have any comments or corrections? 2020.
They're really just in some insignificant typos, which are
Okay.
not, but
The January 9, 2020, let's take them one at a time. So I would move we adopt the planning board minutes for January 9, 2020. Is there a second?
second,
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next meeting was February 6, 2020. I've reviewed those and I have no comment. Any comments, corrections?
no,
I move we adopt. Yeah, I move we adopt them. Is there a second?
second,
All in favor? Aye.
aye,
Good. And our last one, the minutes from the meeting of July 2nd. I looked at that and found one typo, but it's not significant. I would move the adoptions. Or a second?
I just had a question.
Yeah.
That Peter Winder is marked as abstaining from the vote. I mean, I don't know if I don't know what that means, but
Well, it sounds like it's an action as opposed to him just not being.
yeah, he was an alternate, but
Yeah.
he didn't abstain. So, I mean, that's all the rest are just insignificant typos.
I'm just looking back to see on some of these others. It was the same thing on the June minutes were the same thing. He was marked as abstaining. So I think that's just the way she handles it. If he's not needed to so that we have a quorum, he's just abstaining.
And
Okay,
in the May meetings also. In the May meetings, it says abstain.
Yeah. So anyway, do we have a second on these last minutes, the July minutes?
yeah, second,
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Thank you. Good. And as always, thanks to the clerk for this pile of paper. It's quite amazing. Item number 2 on our agenda, 156 Palisade Street. We have moved that to item number 10. And so we will be picking that up later. Item number 3, 41 Cedar Street. Continuation of a public hearing for minor subdivision for Cedar Commons. I think I would first make a motion that we open the public hearing. Is there a second?
second,
All in favor?
I,
aye,
Good. We've had this on the agenda for the last 2 or 3 or 4 meetings. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of comment from people not directly on this particular piece of the project, but more on the project in general. I don't know if there's, Jennifer, can you tell us, anybody that wishes to speak on this one?
This is just for moving the property line
Yeah,
for approximately 15 feet. Linda can be more exact on that. They purchased a piece of property which will have a sewer easement on it from the Presbyterian Church.
right.
So it has nothing to do with the approvals of the building construction. It's just a property line movement.
No, and the comments really have all been basically on the project itself, not on this. I did not find that we'd been furnished with a resolution on this. I don't know.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, Linda Whitehead with the firm of McCullough Goldberger and Stout, representing the applicant. I think Mr. Manley properly stated it. This is just a simple lot line change, transferring about a little under 4,500 square feet from the South Presbyterian Church property to the Cedar Commons property. Our client will be replacing the church's current sewer line and storm sewer lines, and then providing new easements for both of those, as will be shown and has been discussed previously. I thought I saw a draft resolution in the materials.
Dwight, do you have a resolution prepared?
We did send out the resolution for review. I don't know if it was finalized by the legal beagles, but I did draft up one.
It was posted with the materials. I thought I saw it the other day.
I don't seem to have gotten it in my packet, so I was.
Can we email it to Steve? Even
Yeah.
as,
Yeah,
and then,
well, I mean, I'm comfortable in approving it, but I think, without a resolution,
I can pull it up off of the,
Yeah.
someone can pull it up off the postings.
then Steve can just read it.
can read it, yeah. You can read it. I'd want a lawyer to tell me you can do that.
Dwight typically reads them many times since he drafts them.
I'm just trying to find it. Give me 1 second.
Hey, Dwight, do you have a copy of the draft of the resolution?
I'm looking for it.
Good.
I haven't found it yet, but I did prepare it.
I think if you go to the project page,
The village, it's there.
While he's looking for that, we could continue the public hearing for questions, and then if there are none, close the public hearing.
Yeah, is there anyone else that has comments on this in the audience?
We need to open the public hearing.
No. Yes, okay. I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
We didn't do it already. All in favor? Aye.
Right. Does anybody speaking on this?
I don't see anybody with their hands raised.
Good. Then let's close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
I have the resolution. Who should I email it to?
well, whoever's the most facile person here with an email, with a printer anywhere near them.
You could send it to steve.bros@gmail.
Steve.bros@gmail.
@gmail.com.
Sent.
Yeah, has not arrived yet. Okay, here's the resolution. Shall I read it?
Please.
Um,
Yes, please.
Where, Village of Dobbs Ferry Planning Board Resolution granting subdivision approval for a lot line adjustment 4345 Cedar Street. Whereas Cedar Commons LLC has applied for subdivision approval for a lot line adjustment at 4345 Cedar Street and denoted on the tax assessment maps as section 3.80. Block 42, lot 11, located in the DB zoning district. And whereas the following plans and documents are submitted as part of the application: preliminary reapportionment plat, subdivision application dated 6/17/20. Whereas the planning board is familiar with the site and surrounding area and the proposed lot reapportionment and their meeting of August 6, 2020 held a duly noticed public hearing and all comments were considered. And let's gotta scroll down. Whereas a lot line adjustment between two adjoining lots constitutes a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, and is therefore exempt from further environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry herein grants subdivision approval for the subject application conditioned on the following. 1, prior to the execution of the final plat, all required subdivision and village consultants review fees shall be paid. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall have an effective date of August 6th, 2020. Motion by
You.
Steve Brostahan, Planning Board.
Yeah.
Seconded by,
Seconded.
Okay, let Laura second. Laura will second it.
all in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor.
All in favor.
And there's another page here. Oh, so this is for you, for Chairman Hunter to sign. It's the signature page.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything, shall I send this to anybody else or?
No,
I've called it up and that's the exact correct resolution. Sorry for the delay. And is everybody there so I can record the vote? Do we have the full house?
There's no Alan.
Okay.
Alan Hale's not here.
You know what? I could call it up on this computer and, you could look at it if you want to. Is that necessary?
No.
Well, we have Peter here.
Okay.
Oh, I could have shared it before also, sorry.
Yeah, Peter can vote on this.
Okay.
Okay.
Your first official vote, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
So, did we vote? Is that it?
Yes,
Okay.
we all said aye. And
Everyone except for Peter voted. Are you an aye,
Yeah.
Peter? There you go.
okay. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, item number 412 Irving Place, continuation of pre-submission conference for proposed new one-family residence with two-car garage.
Do we have anyone, Jen?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button was messed up. I just promoted Casper to a panelist.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. Casper Tokarski, 12 Irving. We have, I guess, worked a few minor detail changes to the plans and had resubmitted. I'm not sure what exactly the board would like me to do, go over, or just answer questions.
We haven't had a discussion on the proposed house for a while. It was here and then it was sent off to various places. So this monster that you sent us, I think the one thing that continues to be important to me and concerns me is there's a tree near the driveway or proposed driveway on Irving. And I think that tree should be retained. I think there's no pragmatic reason why you can't just make the driveway kind of go around it a very short distance. And
if I can just put in, we've been asked by architectural board several times to look at the tree, and had actually brought out a few tree guys out there. And what I was told that the tree trunk roots are about 12 to 16 inches high from the road. So in order to do a curb cut, even for a single car entry, we would have to significantly damage the roots. And I don't have it written, but their opinion is that the tree will not survive anyhow, just to get a fairly flat entrance from the road. So that's we've been asked by the other board to actually try to consider saving the tree. Came back to the property, looked at it many times, and all of our stakeouts indicate that we're going to harm the tree even with a single entry for the single car. So I am not sure how to present this to the board, if we should spend more money and time and get a professional opinion on it, or in a written status, or is there a way that the board would like to see it? I mean, we have a couple pictures that I could pull up showing how high the root system is. I mean, I know we've been asked by the architectural review board to add the sidewalk on the side if we're removing the tree, which we did. So we're trying to comply. It just I'm having a very hard time figuring out how to save this tree. And we all know that the tree is not the tree trunk, it's the roots, which is, basically, have to be preserved in order to save that tree.
Mr. Chairman, could I add that I had the village's arborist come out way back when this was a pre-submission months ago, before he changed the style and was referred down to the AHRB. And the village's arborist concurred with that determination that the tree had a problem root system to begin with, and the applicant is putting sidewalk on both sides of the property to make up for the removal of that tree.
Just curious, what kind of tree is it?
It's a maple. It's 20-inch maple.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's important for members of the board to go out and take a look at it, just so you understand what it is. And you've looked at other ways to access the garage?
Actually, we've been asked by the other board at the very early stage to actually try to reposition the house, which we had presented to the board, a kind of different options where we play around with the scenario where the house was placed differently with the garage on the property. And because we're a corner lot and the lot is, giving us restrictions, so we had to pick the front setback and the side setbacks. And this was the best out of the all of the options that we could fit a garage and a house on the property. If the garage, if the house was turned the other way, there would be basically no option for the garage with village requirements for the setbacks. And I believe the board have seen, the plans which we submitted way earlier at the very beginning, where it was clearly shown that it's either this way or we completely lose the garage.
I think that's true. I remember that.
I'm sorry to be picky, but silver maple, sugar maple,
Norway maple.
Norway maple. Norway maples I have no sympathy for.
Hopefully.
Good.
Or in April.
Yeah, because I mean, Norway maples cut them all down as far as I'm concerned.
They're a weed.
Weed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, our next step is to set a public hearing in any event, because we haven't held one yet. And then there'll be comment on the trees and other aspects of the site. And can we put in additional plantings of trees to compensate for the loss of this one, if that's the route that it has to go? So,
Yes.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, make sure we all go out and take a look or another look at it. Because losing a big tree, I mean, if you drove around parts of Dobbs Ferry, maybe where Rob lives and in higher elevations, when I was driving around yesterday, there were 3 places where you couldn't get through. I mean, the road was just blocked with trees. So we need our trees, and so weather happens, but when taking them down with a chainsaw is a little tougher.
And I wish the circumstances were a little bit different. And as I mentioned, we had looked and I had requested a professional opinion. And as Mr. Manley just mentioned, that there is, unfortunately, the way the tree developed, it has a very complicated root system, which is exposed, so with the driveway construction, considering digging down just to get a, reinforcement required for the driveway, that tree will basically have no way of survival. So, if we're trying to, achieve one thing, and in my opinion, what's going to happen is if we leave this tree, it will die eventually. And, this is going to create also a lot of issues, as far as, just constructing it, constructing the driveway and an entrance to the house.
Understand.
You said you had photographs of the root system. Is that possible to post?
Yes, if you give me 1 second, I can pull it up. Okay, here we go. I just have to upload it. 1 second.
Laura Haupt has gone off into the twilight.
while we're looking at, Jen, I think George didn't have internet connection. He was trying to call in. That would be a 203 number.
Yes, he's here. I can promote him to a panelist.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and whenever the board is ready, I have this.
It's not a root system, it's just a picture of this.
I'm not sure if everyone can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the picture, a close-up of the root system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there is a nice root going in here, which we tried. So that tree is elevated roughly at 16 inches above the pavement to the highest point of the roots. So that's why I, when I heard all of the requests about, the board trying to save the tree, basically I've contacted my, tree person and, and I asked him to go out there and I said, listen, what do you think? And he said, there is no way this tree is going to make it unless you make the driveway somewhere else.
Thank you. That's helpful. It looks like the tree is sort of compromised up the center there from something.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, we should look at that, but it doesn't look too good to me.
And I mean, as far as the homeowners, we have nothing against the trees. We like the trees, but in some cases, I mean, whatever is necessary is necessary. I'm not here to tell the board what's necessary, but with this, we're just having a hard time figuring out to develop something that's decent looking with that tree.
Thank you.
Understand. Well, we will call for a public hearing at the next meeting, and I think those of us, anybody that has not done an actual tour over there should do that, just so we're clear about what we're talking about. Anybody else have comments at this stage? I would move we call for a public hearing at our next meeting. Is there a second? Mr. Brosnahan? All in favor? Anything else, Ed, at this point that?
You have no other major concerns before the public hearing to give the applicant some direction if you want him to look at anything?
Next meeting.
Was a pretty full set of plans. We did get,
Yeah, please don't send another set.
No, it's not going to change anything if you haven't asked for anything to change. Peter, you're voting tonight. I just
Okay.
want to remind you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I can't promote George Palmer to a panelist, but if he can hear me, if he wants to talk at any point, raise his hand and I'll allow him to talk.
That's a nice way to say it.
That's the treatment he deserves.
Yeah, that's right.
so we're all set with the public hearing, or did we vote? Or
No, I mean, I move that we call for a public hearing at our next meeting.
Yes, and we all voted.
We all voted? Okay, yeah, we voted.
It was eyes all around.
Okay.
55 Broadway, 555 Broadway.
555, yep, item number 555 Broadway, request 5-year, oh, I see what it is, extension for special permit for Hudson Hall, yeah. Mr. Mandelbaum,
Good evening, everyone.
welcome.
Nice to see you all again in a different way than the last time. Good evening. My name is Seth Mandelbaum with McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. Pleased to be here on behalf of our clients, Mercy College. As you can see, Tom Simmons, Mercy's Vice President for Operations and Facilities, has also joined the meeting. We're here this evening to discuss the 350-bed dormitory known as Hudson Hall, that in a simpler time in 2014, this board served as lead agency. We went through, as you may remember, a full environmental impact statement process, which resulted in, we believe, a great project that was constructed and opened in January of 2016. And this board was not only the lead agency for seeker, but also was the approval authority for the special permit for the dormitory, although the Board of Trustees was the approval authority for site plan approval. And you also, as you may remember, had given a recommendation on the site plan at that time, which the Board of Trustees ultimately approved as well. So in your resolution from 2014 on the special permit, there was a condition at the end of the resolution that it was good for 5 years after the issuance of the CO. And the original CO was issued on January 7th, 2016. So it expires on January 7th, 2021. And the resolution also said that Mercy must apply for an extension 6 months prior to the expiration, which is why we're here now and not in November or December. So we're asking the board to consider a 5-year extension till January 7th, 2026. This evening, we're asking you to consider scheduling a public hearing for your next meeting on September 3rd. And the final thing I'll note before I hand it over to Tom Simmons to do a brief PowerPoint is that you are the only involved agency this time under seeker, because this is just special permit extension or renewal. So I talked to Dan Posen about it today. I don't believe there's any necessity for a lead agency declaration on this one. But of course, it's up to you as belt and suspenders. If you wanted to do that, we wouldn't object, but I believe you are the only involved agency on this particular action. With that, I'll hand it over to Tom Simmons, who will take you through a brief PowerPoint, and then we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Good evening. It's good to see everyone again. Did you give me the ability to share my screen? Can you see my screen?
I gave you the ability, but we don't see it yet. On the bottom, there should be a
Yep.
green share screen button.
See it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Good to see everyone again.
Ah,
So as Seth mentioned, in January 2016, we opened a 350 bed residence hall on the Dobbs Ferry campus. It was approved through I would say, a very collaborative, interactive planning process with you as a board. And I would say the end result of the product was a great building that you had some significant input on and helped us make a better building. It's a 350 bed residence hall. It has a common area on the first floor, about 10,000 square feet of common space. And one of the big pieces that we work with you on with this is just as much of a site plan project and a planning for how this fit in the context of the campus, as well as the building structure itself. We spent a lot of time thinking about a traditional quad in the middle of the campus. We've got an interconnecting pedestrian spine, and we had a lot of landscape and sustainable features that were all part of this project that we're very proud of. And we think this is really complemented the OCA Trail, and what we've been doing on campus, and the surrounding community is a positive piece with that. Here's an idea. This gives you an idea of the image of how the new building fit into the placement. And we worked very hard with you about how that was going to fit, creating this ring road to deal with pedestrian and vehicular traffic. And we really believe if you walked in this area, this kind of interconnecting quad in the middle has done a lot to connect the front of Main Hall and now what is our front of the Old Lady of Victory building to really help things. As part of that, there was a lot of talk about landscape, a lot of talk about it being the lead features of the building, the elements that were site elements from a sustainability standpoint, and all the landscape pieces that we put in. Now, we worked with Lucille Munzon and Dwight from your team, and George Palmer, as well as folks from the landing for some buffers on different things. So we're very proud of that piece. And as it's been 4.5 years, as things have matured, it's really, it feels right. The scale feels right as you walk through it. Same with the lighting, I think has done some great things for us. There's just an image of some of that first floor, which is more of a commons area. We have a Starbucks in there, a fitness center, about 10,000 square feet of campus commons area that works off the pedestrian spine. The rooms there's 350 beds of 4- and 6-person suites. I will just mention that with this building and the other dorm, there's 2 dorms on the Dobbs Ferry campus. We have about 680 beds. This was 350. The other one's about 330. So that's about 15% of our overall population on the campus. So we're still primarily a commuter campus, as you're aware, but the establishment of a residential community in the heart of the campus. It's really helped us from an overall collegiate feel and a sense of belonging for the area. So some of the things that we worked with you on that were very important, we heard loud and clear right from the beginning of the planning board. And it's good to see that Rob's right there because he had a lot of great input on this. The whole idea of a transportation demand management plan that I think we are, we're 4 or 5 years into with that planning consultant, and a lot of things we've done on campus to be sensitive to the traffic, the parking and driving pieces of what you mentioned to us. And we really do a lot of things to monitor that, to incentives. And I think you're aware of most of those that we've done as far as visitor parking. We acquired the Terrytown office complex down the road, where I moved a lot of backlit services and our central receiving functions. As you're aware, we don't allow freshmen to have vehicle on campus in the residential population. A lot of biking, changing areas. We have a transportation director. We hosted a regional workshop that Charlene had asked us to be partners with recently. So our goals of sustainability and all those things have fit in very well with the village. And if you haven't had a chance, I hope you've all seen the path we just put down to the Ardsley on Hudson train stop on the Irvington side. We're very proud of that. And I think that's done a lot to strengthen those in that area. So I think the site components of this have been important. Operationally, the things we heard from you that we're doing from a monitoring standpoint that we're working with all the village leaders on was the increase in security and protocols. We have a lot of operational coverage late at night where people thought that was kind of a deficiency for us. We have noise monitoring protocols that we work with the village on. Very positive relationships with the fire and police people that have come. We've established our emergency command centers, a lot of open communication, a good communication with the landing leadership. And as I mentioned, we've been part of your sustainability and transportation groups, as well as the quality of life task force that you've asked us to be parts of. The one element that's still open and outstanding that was a condition of the original approval is us adding this turning lane. That was a condition of the project on Route 9. So there'll be a third lane that gets added on the right side as you come out. And then part of that really changes all the radiuses on that turning lane. And we've been working with McLaren Engineering, as you're probably aware, and your planning consultants are, for quite some time. And what I will say, it's been quite the journey working with the DOT on this. The majority of the time delays has been resulted is from the land transfer. The original right of way on the side of 9, which we actually had to transfer and donate that land to the state. And we've gone back and forth with maps. That finally went up the hill to the Attorney General's office for, we thought, final approval about 4 or 5 months before the pandemic set in. And the Attorney General rejected some of the title abstracts on it that the DOT office in Poughkeepsie had accepted. So we're going to redo some of those title abstracts and send them back in. And this, I think, will add to the value of what some you have worked with us on this. We are very supportive of doing this piece of the project, just like you were. And we can't wait till we can be able to do it. Hopefully everything's going to line up and we can do it soon and we have that approval. So with that, that's just a brief overview of a building that I feel has been very successful from Mercy College. I thank you for your involvement in the planning process. It's created, I think, a very signature building from our end, but an asset to the community. And Seth and I are open to answer any questions you might have.
We talked a little bit, Steve Hunter, could you talk a little bit more about the relationship with the landing people? Because that was an interesting one at the time. I'm hoping that like it sounds like you have good neighbors and their concerns about kids running wild through the landing did not come to that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Chairman, it's really hard to hear that question. I don't know if Tom, if you could hear it.
I could, but I had to kind of strain to hear it. But I believe it was the essence of the dialogues with the landing and how things were going.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the most part, positive. There are, as Ed and the mayor and different people know, there is some concern by some of the residents behind the other residence hall related to noise and some activities back there. So some of that does have some challenges right now that we're working with the municipality on in different ways. But for the most part, our conversations with them have been very positive on Border Edge and pieces on that. I think if we go to further develop the back of Founders Mercy Complex, which is the other residence hall, the older one there, I think there's some things that the Landings would like to see us work with them on to change and strengthen, and we're committed to having those dialogues. And when we bring that project to the planning board, I know that will be talked about. So it's more about the different building than this one, Steve. And Ed's aware of those dialogues.
Has the hall been fully used for this period, during this period?
For the period coming up, this building will have not quite full occupancy in the residence hall. You're limited on either single or double rooms. Yeah. This building is suites with double rooms, so this building can be fully occupied. Some of the other ones cannot. You can't have triples or quads. So we have less density on different areas. So we'll be at a less occupancy on the residence hall.
I think, can you all hear me?
Yeah, Rob.
I just want to say, I think you all have been great partners with the village on this. And in the years I've been in Dobbs Ferry, I feel like the campus has just gotten better and better in terms of the way it looks and functions from my point of view, including the way the addition to the building that you see from Broadway looks. So I think it's really good. The one thing, and I'm a little bit talking out of my depth here because I haven't heard it so much directly, but I know that a good number, or I guess some number of your students are now living in the downtown. Is that right? Which,
yeah, there's definitely some off-campus housing, yes.
Which, by the way, is great. I mean, that's what we wanted. There was this idea that, some of the students would be living in downtown and would shop in downtown and eat in downtown. That's exactly what you want. My sense is, and I just like bits and pieces of things I've heard about whether there are any issues related to that in terms of either parking or noise, and maybe there are other people on the call who have experience with this, but I just feel like over in our discussions of downtown, I feel like occasionally somebody raises an issue. Again, I'm like all about it. I think that's exactly what we wanted to happen, but I'm just wondering if you have gotten any feedback from the village or complaints from the village about whether, student partying at night, they're off campus, so they get to do things that they might not get to do on campus, right? That's part of the fun of living off campus.
Yes, so
I'm kind of wondering if,
so there has been, that's that quality of life task force that Charlene and Rick and people were putting together. Kevin Joyce, our student affairs leader, our vice president of student affairs, is part of that. I have sat on some. And then Conrad Motika, our head of campus safety, has been involved in that also. So it's been a good dialogue. Charlene was taking a big lead on that with different things. Some of it has to do with parking. Parking's a big one. Some of it does have to do with noise. Some of the concerns we heard with certain things, whether it be noise or garbage. Like anything else, it's probably a very small percentage of that. But, if it's right next to you, the people had some valid concerns that we were working to understand and to, have student expectations on behavior and to work with them. So the dialogue was the big piece. Some of the individuals that have had direct problems that have contacted us on the campus about parking. We had some things over by the golf course where some people were ignoring our parking rules, maybe parking over by somebody. So we go and chase them out. So I get some thank yous a lot of times for thanks for getting right on that and looking at it. So it's part of a partnership. It's part of understanding what those concerns are and educating our students that you're part of a community. and to be respectful and all that. So yeah, Rob, that's that quality of life piece that's part of maybe any college town in some ways, that Mercy's working hard to try to be a good partner with you on that.
I don't know if there's anything else at this point. We can call, we just go through, Ed, a normal approval process, where we call, have a public hearing, and then go on through. Ed's not talking.
Steve, can you try to mute
You're
your
a little
mic
muffled,
and then
Steve, but-
unmute it?
You're a little muffled, Steve.
To me?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better. So you said public hearing, right?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
good.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we will see you on September 3rd, correct?
Yes, nice to see you both again.
Good to see everyone.
Take care. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
The next item on our agenda, item number 6, 13 English Lane. This is a Board of Trustees referral for proposed new multifamily building, 3 units on English Lane. And I hope everybody now knows where English Lane is.
English Lane, right?
Right. Rolls right off your tongue, right? English Lane.
Penny Lane.
I don't think I saw any plans for this. Did people receive plans for 13
No.
English?
No.
Yes, there are plans. They're actually really interesting plans.
Yes,
That we got?
Yeah.
No. No.
hi,
Hi.
I'm Christina Griffin, the architect. Can everyone hear me?
Welcome, yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
We were referred by the BOT to you, and I do have drawings I can share with you if you'd like. I can share the screen. Does everyone see the drawings?
That's nice. You know, Christina, it would be helpful. I don't know if you have a plot to show people where English Lane is and how this.
Yes,
building-
I do. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. We are proposing to put 3 townhouses on this piece of vacant land. And this is, English Lane is a dead-end street that runs north-south from Ashford Avenue. It's sort of between these retail shops. There's a deli nearby, and it's very close to the Lutheran church.
Right.
So down this narrow street, there are a few multifamily buildings. I think they're mostly 2-family, maybe a 2-3-family. There's just a few buildings here. So what we're proposing is to put 3 new townhouses here. This is our zoning chart, and we have like 6,300 square feet. And we're planning to meet all the code requirements for lot coverage, impervious coverage, building height. This is going to be, they're going to be 3-story, but really 2-story with a full basement townhouses, each about 2,000 square feet. And we're planning to have the units close to the front property line, but to meet the setback, which is 0, and to meet all the other setbacks for side yard and rear yard. Let me see if I can shrink this, just a second. Okay, down below, there are some photos of the empty lot. The one on the left is showing, I'm standing on the lot looking back at the 2-story houses across the street. And the next shot is a two-family house, I believe. That's right across the street. And then the third photo is a 2 or 3 family house right at the end of the street. And the next one is just another view of the lot looking the other way. Oh, the next, yes, just looking back into the lot. It's a very quiet street. And the next slide is just the survey that we have so far. We are getting a topographic survey, just showing the empty lot. Let me shrink that a little bit.
But if I said parking,
Okay, I'll get to parking. Okay, this is our site plan. The idea is that the parking is in a garage that's on the lowest basement level. And this is our ground floor plan. The idea is that we will have all the parking concealed from view from the street. And there's going to be 6 spots for the 3 units, so 2 per unit. So there's going to be like a garage door that you enter off English Lane. And then there's 3 foyers with entrances up into the up into the townhouses.
what is the zoning?
It's a downtown transitional zone.
Town transition.
And 3 stories is allowed. Multifamily and mixed use is allowed. So we're proposing to have 3 townhouses that are attached with open layouts on the first floor, living room, dining, kitchen, and 3 bedrooms, 2 bath on the second floor. This is the front elevation facing English Lane. And the idea is that we would have a garage door that you would enter to the garage below. The units are on top of the garage. This is the rear elevation. That bottom line should be dashed. We're planning to fill in the grade so that you come out just a few steps below first floor to patios in the back. And this is our side elevation showing the difference in grade. This is our existing versus proposed streetscape, just showing the relationship of the 3 townhouses to that existing commercial building that's right at the corner of English Lane and Ashford Avenue. So today we're just here as a pre-submission. We have Hudson Engineering working on our storm drainage plans, which we'll be submitting to you soon. And I'd like to know if you have any questions.
Well, it's a really an unknown little part of the world. I say that.
Uh-huh.
I walked around that site. It's a super interesting site.
Yeah.
Really, actually, it's a very nice site, just ripe for this kind of thing. And planning board has to have an award for an application that does not require any variances. No arguing over the zoning. So my compliments on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, we punished people who did that.
Well, we look forward to moving to the next step. Anybody else have any comments or questions at this point? So, who's the developer here?
Andrew, Cortese Construction.
I'm here as well. Hi, all.
Ah. Oh, there you are.
Yes. How you doing? Sorry, no electricity, so I'm outside.
No, that's all right. Just finding people on the screen. That's it.
Yes.
Is the next step a public hearing for us?
I don't see why not. I think we could go forward. Is there any discussion among the board on that?
No, I mean, just they'll submit the complete plans and look at them, and then we can open the public hearing.
Yeah. So, and this is a little bit of fast tracking, but it seems appropriate in this case. So
Yeah, it's really, I think this is really appropriate for this site.
It's totally compliant, so it would make sense to set the public hearing and discuss the engineering.
Yeah, right. Well, I would make a motion then that we call for a public hearing in our next meeting. Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Yep. Okay, the next item on our agenda is 12 Parkway Drive. Pre-submission conference for site plan review for proposed new 2-car garage with deck above and new 2-story extension of the house, presumably. And the applicants are on the screen. Welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Blatter, I believe.
Yes.
Correct.
Hold on.
I got
Oh, are you still here, Christine?
Yes, it's Christina. I'm the architect for this project.
We're getting feedback there.
Yeah. And I'd like to share my screen so we can look at the drawings together.
If the Blatters are in the same room, you may get some feedback.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
All right, can you see the drawing?
yes.
All right, this is an old stucco house that is 2.5 stories high, and we are planning to put an addition onto the house that will consist of a 2-car garage, mudroom, kitchen extension, and master bath on the second floor. This is our site plan. I'll enlarge that for you. Okay. On the left in the shaded area is the new garage that we are proposing. The house presently does not have any garage, and they're for, so that they can have their cars covered and have a safe way out of the house during stormy weather. They would like to have a 2-car garage with a mudroom. And then on top of that, we're planning to put a small addition that's about 130 square feet to extend the kitchen. That's very small right now. And then on top of that, a new master bath. This garage meets the setbacks on the side, the minimum 10-foot setback, and also all the other front yard and rear yard and lot coverage requirements. This is our first floor, our lowest level plan, the basement plan. This is showing the new 2-car garage, which was 22 by 22 feet clear on the inside, which is very modest for a garage, and a mudroom that attaches the garage to the house. And then this is an existing finished basement. On the floor above, we're planning to have an extension to the kitchen so there can be an eat-in area, like a breakfast area off the kitchen, and a door to a deck, a roof deck over that garage.
Yeah.
We're also planning to rebuild the steps that are in disrepair coming up to the front door. So we're redoing that, the steps that are currently there now, enlarging the platform so it's a more inviting way of entering the house, and widening the steps going down to the driveway. And then on the second floor, we're planning to add a master bath. Right now, the whole family shares that one bathroom on this level. So we're adding that to the master bedroom suite. Okay, these are our elevations. And what we've done is we put the proposed elevation on top of the existing, just so you can see the difference. Our first elevation is east. This is facing the backyard. To the right is the new roof deck over the garage, which on the east side, the garage is more than halfway buried into the grade. And this is down below is the existing house. On the proposed west elevation, showing the front of the house, which shows a 2-car garage with a door to the mudroom to the right, roof deck on top, and a 2-story addition with the kitchen extension and the master bath. Then to the right, we're also showing new stone steps, the platform leading to the doors to the dining room, and then eventually to the front door of the house. On the north elevation, this is showing the side of the garage and the roof deck, showing that there will be steps going to an upper grade on this side. Down below is the existing condition that we have that has no garage, just a small deck. And then on the south elevation, it is showing that well, there's really no addition on that side, but you'll just see a little bit of the new platform from that view. This is our survey. We have a new topographic survey, and we have civil engineers looking at this and ready to work on a stormwater system for the project. And as you can see from the survey, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. The grade does, there's a slope about, I think about 14% for the driveway, and then it levels off. And at this level area where there's an open parking area for two cars, this is where we plan to put the new garage.
Yep.
So just like to know if the board has any questions for us.
I don't think so, Steve.
No.
I walked by here today. I live on South Lawn, so it's just a loop around. And I think, basically, once it gets done, I don't know if people will see that anything's happened. It all makes a lot of sense and will fit in very nicely with the existing house.
Is this yet another fully compliant project?
Yeah, yes.
It's unbelievable.
2 in a row.
What an interesting property that goes all the way through to South Lawn. What a fabulous property. Wow.
Yeah, it is. And this is a nice upgrade, and we really do want it to all harmonize with the original house, which has some very nice overhangs and nice details.
Yeah, this looks really good to me.
Thanks. So what would our next step be?
All for a public hearing.
Mhm.
I move that we have a public hearing at our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so much, and I really, really appreciate it. Steve, if you were on the aqueduct, come say hi. I'm out with my dogs all the time.
Do you do a loop around South Lawn?
I do. I
tell you, I don't know. I think everybody that lives around there is new and they all have dogs.
Yeah, I have too. We just got a puppy too. So I'll definitely say hello. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. Everybody's time tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Okay. Off we go. Item number 8, 189 Broadway, continuation of resubmission conference for proposed minor subdivision and cluster development. The long-awaited return of Mr. Javier. Javier, are you there?
I am, sorry.
Hi.
Oh, I see I have the orange hue. Well, anyway, please forgive that. Anyway, so yeah, good to be back on this project. This is 189. I'm Javier de la Garza, the architect. We've been working with Mr. Howell. He has lived at this residence for many, many years, raised his 5 children there. And his wife is deceased, but he's interested in developing this property. So I'm going to go and share my screen. We did come to you about almost a year ago, and we were exploring a couple ideas, basically taking the balance of the property, his 3-family homes on one side, and we were looking at 2 3-family homes. This is in the MDR1 zone. So that's permitted. And after review and meeting with Mr. Manley and so forth, we sort of came to a different approach. So that's what we're presenting to you tonight. So I'd like to share my screen here. All right, very good. So this is just a little by way of orientation. So I'm sure you guys might know the site. This is Broadway coming down here. Right, here's our beautiful Hudson River, and here's the subject property. So it's basically kind of right over here is Livingston on this side. Folks can see it. I'll have some closer views here. So here's a little bit of a closer view. Here's the property, and here's the, when I go to zoom, it pulls down everything. So here's the property. So it's immediately adjacent to a 6-story apartment building, Sussex Hall, and surrounded by 1 and 2 families around here. There's some wonderful history here, tied in with Revolutionary War, et cetera. But in any case, this is the property, and so this is the house that Mr. Howell raised his family in, and it's currently a 3-family home. So you can see here, it's sort of the balance that we were talking about that's really adjacent to this property, the Sussex Hall. There's a little bit some aerial views, right? This is looking from Livingston from the west, looking on. Here's the back of his house here, some solar panels and parking, and so it's really this expanse here. Most of these trees, I know you mentioned trees earlier, these were actually planted by him in years past, and many of them are overgrown. The important thing here is the land is somewhat flat, it's sloping down, and it drops off steeply. The other thing here is we have a view shed right here. Basically, it's not clear from the map, but in this area you do have a view over his lawn. And these houses are really quite low relative to that, and you can look out to the Hudson. So that's really the phenomenal feature. He has this great porch, and that's been source of fantastic Memorial Day picnics for many years. Here's another view. You can see the relative height here of Sussex Hall compared to really everything around it. There's another view, right, just sort of overlooking Broadway and looking out that way. There's Livingston on that side. So this is generally the outline of where we're proposing something. So what we're coming to tonight with is a cluster approach, and that requires planning board determination. This would be 4 units versus the 2 3-family units. So I'm just going to go through a few views. So this is looking out at the Hudson. Of course, this is the historic home, the porch, and the lawn falling off that way. You can see the houses here. These are not small houses, but they are really set in down below. So that's what we're trying to preserve as much as possible. This is what I mentioned, swing sets and some overgrown trees. Here you start seeing Sussex Hall. So we're just rotating around. Now this hedge here is bordering Broadway. So there's the neighbor across the street. There's the entry. You'll see this here in the plans. It's sort of a marker, the entry to the property. All right, these are a few close-up views of some of those. The land falls off in the back corner as it goes, I guess, northwest. It falls off somewhat steeply there. So we do have some steep slope there. There's some other views looking out. You can see the relative height here. And, so the eave line here for this house, when you do it in section, it's really up to even look at the bottom of this plus, Sussex Hall is looming over on the other side. All right, and now here's basically some of the surrounding areas. Right, so there's of course the aqueduct. This is the part where it passes across Hatch Terrace and Broadway, kind of starts over there, or continues on, I should say. And you can see here Sussex Hall to the right. So here, after you've crossed Broadway, looking back, so there's Sussex Hall. This is 189 Broadway over here. And really right about where this tree is really where we're making our proposal. So this is now, of course, the aqueduct after you've crossed. Again, Sussex Hall. And I wanted to, basically see what you could see from the aqueduct. I know it'll come up here. So he's kind of looking down. And the neighboring house that I showed you before is this one here on the left. So you're kind of just barely peeking through over the hedge, and you can see a little bit of that there. I don't know that that'll be preserved. Because what we're proposing basically is to pull this back as tight as we can away from the existing house and to open that up. So this is kind of the long view. It tends to be pretty overgrown here. So this is now walking along the sidewalk along Broadway. So we're really focusing on was not so much what we would do from the aqueduct, but as people, the view shed really, which is not so much from the street, but from the walk, and how we can maximize that. So he's looking back towards the aqueduct. So this is really, as you're walking, what you would be seeing here. So there's the porch, right? Here's the hedge, and you'll see these trees here need to come out. There's the entry. So you can see that's the, I think that's 38 Livingston over there, kind of peeking up. We went over to Livingston. Now this is that same cupola there, right? So you're looking back up, standing across Livingston, looking up, and you can see the size of this building here, Sussex Hall. So again, what we're proposing would be really, you'll see when we get to the elevations, not prominent relative to that. There it is again. So here's the edge of it right there. So ours would really be somewhere around here. Oh, great. So we'd sent in a letter here. So basically just to review what cluster development is. I know it doesn't come up a lot, but this is a subdivision or site plan approved pursuant to this chapter in which the applicable zoning regulations are modified to provide an alternative permitted method for layout configuration and design of lots, buildings, and structures, roads, utilities, et cetera, to preserve the natural and scenic qualities of open lands, to create a more compact development, or to meet additional goals of the vision plan. So that's really what we're after here. Encourage, it sort of goes on a little bit, but these are the things that we're trying to work with you on. So here's our proposal. So you can see here the property is, I believe it's 38,000 square feet. It comes all the way here. And we'd basically be splitting it here. So not quite in half, but preserving enough so that all of this is legal, plus a little extra. And then working with it, so deducting for steep slopes and the sort, everything, of course, we have adequate space. This here is the fire lane. In addition to backup parking, we've worked with the fire chief, and he's on board with this. He wanted to have ladder access to this back unit. So this is sort of an interesting structure. It's a fourplex unit. I won't call it a townhouse because it is, the cars simply would not be accommodated here with the back out and so forth. It got complicated. Let me zoom in a little bit there. So again, this will be 3 out of 3 tonight. This is entirely in conformance with the codes, except for, of course, your...
Not so fast.
Okay, not so fast. The in terms of height and mass. So basically, these are the 4 garages, and you can see the color coding. So this garage belongs to this unit, and so there's a very small amount of living space on the ground floor, kind of like office or bonus space, and the terraces. This is sort of the 2 levels of living, and then this is the roof level here, which would have some little bonus room as well, a playroom or something up on that level. So terraces. So everybody has a terrace up at the top level. This is not design. This is really strictly massing and conformance, sky exposure planes and heights and so forth. So this one here kind of indicates a typical section where we have dropped down on the drive, and this is the wall of the adjacent building. So we're staying back from there and shore it up a little bit, and have the drive to get the cars in underneath this. Here you see basically this would be treated sort of as a muse. You're coming down from Broadway. This is the driveway and the 4 garages, and the the units on top are of course a little misaligned with them, and then Unit D is the 4th one here, which is makes the turn. So this gives you an idea here of the relative height. This is 189 Broadway. This is the maximum that we would pursue here, and this is the the adjacent building. This is sort of looking back. This is looking east now. The patio, and so basically Unit D is the one here. This would be the elevation of Unit D, and there are these little passages to allow you to go from the court and kind of slip through the entry. Actually, the units would be through that. Very good. So any questions?
Can I, Javier?
Yeah.
Good to see you. Miss you. So are you planning on doing any kind of, even if they were conceptual, sort of 3-dimensional volumetric studies that actually show what this massing looks like relative to the existing house and the views and so on that you showed? I mean, conceptually, I get it, and I think it makes sense, but I don't, to be honest, I'm having trouble visualizing how all of these buildings that you're showing on this drawing right here actually relate to each other as an ensemble. So I'm wondering, what do you plan on presenting?
Yeah,
to kind of give us a sense of that.
Yeah, so this is entirely undesigned. It is strictly many options actually just to arrive at this. And the idea is basically to see what the board thinks about the cluster development approach. So we don't want to come to you with not enough for you to understand the position or not a workable, realistic thing, but we understand this is extremely preliminary. So this is strictly pre-submission. Because we're going a little bit out on a limb that this is a better approach to the site. Also, this is what we did here. Let me draw some lines to make these a little clearer. So basically, the view lines. And so basically, as you're walking along the sidewalk here, you essentially have a view. So it's roughly 100 feet plus. You'll have a view of the Hudson there. So that's, I mean, it was hard to measure what view angle and so forth, but basically as you're 100 feet of your walking path, you would still that view.
I wouldn't call this so much a cluster as a subdivision, simply with a townhouse in the MDR1, which is allowed on one of the lots. Which lot is A, the existing house?
Yes, lot A. So let me come over here. So we actually, there's a different table here. These are a little tighter than they actually are. We were counting only the net we understood we're allowed to count to the gross area. So these percentages go up in terms of lot coverage. I mean, they go down. So we're at about 24%.
Hi, Javier. Thank you for presenting this, and I really appreciate how much importance you've given to preserving the view here. I just had a question about the fire lane in the back. No, I know that you need to have setbacks, but obviously if you could move the cluster development closer to Sussex Hall, that would open up more view in front of it. Even if there was, the road was in front of those, in front of the cluster. So what's the reasoning to put the roadway behind the buildings there in between that and Sussex?
Well, yeah, so this was a, of course, this is Mr. Howell's residence. So the idea was that this is not a, we looked at an option where we put the road, should we say the drive right over the lawn. That was not really something we wanted to pursue. So the cars need, 24 feet to back out. The fire truck needs 22 feet, 21 feet, I guess. And so basically this is a little more steeply sloped and, comes to more level. It's basically matching the wall and down a little bit there. So we did look at an option, if that's what you're asking of.
The fire department nixed that because they needed access to the back building.
Yeah, I understand that was a problem from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
We looked at this, that basically it was not the hoses, it was the ladders. So I learned my first lesson of firefighting. So basically the truck can get up here and treat the fire on this back unit.
Okay.
I think for me, I don't know if I'm muted. So I have a question. And I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in the cluster development code, it says, to protect environmentally sensitive areas of development site and preserve open space and natural features permanently. It seems to me that you're removing a really lot of trees and landscape that screens the Howell property from 191 Broadway. So what would you do to be able to naturally put those trees back, or?
Right, yeah. So we would definitely have a whole landscaping plan here. I mean, it is, I don't think these trees, which is why I made the point, we are taking out a number of trees. I'll just zoom in here that we've identified. They're not really, well, it's to be determined, but, specimen trees. To us, it was really about the view and the view for the public. And, that's just this wonderful thing to be shared. So.
And what happens to the deer that live down there?
Say it again.
What happens to all the deer that live over there? Because I frequently see deer and babies coming out from that area and going across Broadway. There is wildlife back there.
Yeah, so this whole area here belongs to Sussex Hall, to 191 North Broadway. So that, I assume that's not developed as part of the. So obviously we have no effect on that.
But I would like to see the massing of that also, because it seems like it's pretty dense.
Sorry, real clear, the massing
of these buildings that you're proposing, because it seems very dense compared to the existing house.
Right. So I think part of the, this is 3, I'll zoom in here. So this is basically 3 units. This is where Mr. Howell resides. There's an apartment on this side, and there's another apartment on this side. And they're all 2-story. So, that's a compact little operation there. These are, 3-story height. But, in some ways they're fairly generous. I don't know if that's your point. So I think part of it is that this, such tunnel is such an anomaly within this that we actually got some lower things and it seems sort of dwarf it in comparison. As you for the height, the relative height of this. Right, so we're less than half the height of that building.
Yeah, I understand, like, you're comparing those to 191, but on the other hand, it still seems massive for that site. I guess it's maybe the way the clusters are, or you're technically, I mean, it almost, in the site, I almost would rather see it individual units dispersed rather than like this townhouse row kind of thing. And is this going to be like rentals or something, or is this just for family?
This is for family, so I don't think sales is the point of this. So my thought is that it is for family and for them to use, and maybe they'll rent them or whatever. So I can't really speak to their intended use, but they would certainly be at the market. I don't know that anything quite like this exists, in at least in our kind of investigation for the comps. We don't. Everything we see that is like this is on the other side of the county or going up to into.
Javier, since this is about the view, it would be useful to do a sort of a simple SketchUp massing and be able to sort of just look around in the view slot that you've signified.
Yeah.
Just get an idea of what that means. I mean, I think it's close, and I think that with some adjustment, you could make this view work, but I think a little bit more examination into what this massing looks like from eye level would be useful.
Right. No, I mean, we, Bob's point earlier, these are completely undesigned. It's so we would have 3D models, if not a physical model, depending on what the budget allows, and study it carefully. And I think that a lot of the concerns, that Laura mentioned, are how do these things read? This, we have ideas of what they will be, but they're not studied. They're not designed, and of course you can't. In my mind, and as you recall, I was always sort of saying on the board that the quality of the design is really what you give back to the village. And that would be the point here, that there's something very attractive, and Mr. Howell is very committed to making this appear and be a real quality product.
But you could do an X-ray SketchUp view where the buildings are X-ray, so you could see, you can sort of see what the outline is and plop them onto that spot and just be able to look around a little bit. I mean, it's totally up to you and the budget and Mr. Howell, but I just thought that would be useful for the next.
I think that's a real requirement. So it's really a matter of the design, investing more in the design without getting some confirmation that this general approach is acceptable.
Okay.
Javier, just going back to Laura's point, what is the difference between, for you, besides having, of course, more exterior wall, which is expensive? What is the conceptual difference for you between having these 3 attached units versus having 3 separate little buildings, even if they were quite close to each other?
Well, I suppose you get less size, of course, of the units if they're not touching. We understood that it's sort of a requirement of the definition of the cluster, that they are touching together. If they're 4 little houses, I don't think you can have 4 houses on, more than 1 house on a property. So now you have 4, I suppose everything can be waived or adjusted. Maybe Ed wants to speak to that, but I think it's you have 4 separate units not touching each other would seem, I think also that might push it too far in the other direction. All of a sudden you have 4 tiny little houses clustered together.
Right, when we looked at this last time, you were trying to go for a cluster on one whole lot. And
Yeah.
with the definition of the cluster, trying to preserve, open space and in that way, putting smaller buildings on a huge lot closer together and preserving that common area, it didn't really fit. But
Yeah.
this is a townhouse, which does fit the zone. But of course, you still need to prove, your lines of sight and massing and height. My question would be is on your impervious coverage, you're just under, and there's a notation that you're assuming 50% pervious driveway. What is that material you're using?
Well, that's to be determined. It would basically be we're assuming, so first of all, the numbers were corrected. So those numbers would go down. Let me pull up something here. This is an adjusted dimensional table, but right, so these are now we're basically pitting them against this lot area, which is after the steep slope deduction, but if by using the gross, all the percentages go down. So pervious surface, I guess we're still at about 50%. So the thought would be to use what is on the other side on 189 Broadway, which are these open pavers with gravel.
Javier, back to Ed's point. Why isn't this just a townhouse development? What's the clustering all about? I'm kind of lost.
They're essentially one and the same. So
I think leaving it, talking about clustering is maybe confusing, and also to meet that standard of creating open space and all this stuff seems a tight squeeze here. Whereas if the townhouse development is proposed, then we evaluate on the basis of a townhouse development. I just don't quite see the value of getting into clustering on this, or getting into the argument of clustering or not clustering. You've split the lot in half, or roughly half, 2 lots now. One has a 3-family house on it. The other has 4 townhouses that are attached. To me, that's the proposal. I think it just confuses stuff to get into the clustering stuff.
Right.
Javier, it's Steve.
Steve, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Is the number 4 units important for Ernie?
There are 4 units. Yeah.
Yeah, but is that important to Ernie Howell? Why not 3? I mean, I know this family for 50, 60 years. He's got 5 children, so you're not doing 5 units. But
Really hard to hear you, Steve.
I'm sorry?
It's really hard to hear you.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm not doing.
So I heard you right. You were saying, what about 3, which would be a 3-family house? You can actually, split this. Well, basically, it wouldn't make the best use of the site. I think it wouldn't be the best return on the site, I think. Because you could actually put 2 3-family homes on this. You'd have one, in the back, and one up here in the front. I think that's more or less what we had come to you before with. So we're going from 6 to 4, and these are already kind of at the upper end of, we'll say, of the market in terms of the amount of space in them and the amenities.
Javier?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of massing solution in which the unit that's closest to Broadway on the one that's most immediately adjacent to the existing house, is there any way that that could be a kind of a different massing and something that related either in terms of orientation or some other way to the existing house? Like right now, the way you've designed it, it looks like the sort of townhouse development is like a piece of the big apartment building to the north. And I guess I'm wondering if
I
although
think that, so in general, you know, there were a lot of, we were trying to bake into this pie, but it is half baked. So, you know, I think that is exactly the kind of stuff that we would, you know, work with you all. You know, in general, the idea is that this is something more, you know, solid, a little more like the adjacent or kind of more consistent. You know, of course, this building rotates here in a big way, but you know that this is a little more closed, facing the street, and it, you know, things open up, and there are more windows facing, of course, the view, and you know, back here. So there also just be kind of a real difference between, we call it Unit A and Unit D, that they've really broken down and opened up, and you know, maybe it's consistent stylistically, but I understand what you're saying, that basically we want a little more of a street presence and not this could be anywhere and it just happens to be here.
yeah, and to kind of acknowledge the building, the existing building in some way. Doesn't have to mimic it, obviously, that would be terrible, but I don't know, maybe there's something about the orientation and the massing that's different than the other units and that, you know, is mediating between the existing building and your new buildings.
You know, looking at the old maps of this area is interesting because there was Ernie Howell's house, and then there was the carriage house on our property, and there was nothing else around except for the overkeeper's, you know, the overseer's house on the aqueduct. And it was all subdivided by a descendant of the Hatches, you know, and sold as lots later, like around the turn of the century. So it's interesting to see how this has developed over time. But it was really just Ernie Howell's house and the carriage house, you know, on our property, and then open fields.
This was apparently, let's see, I'm getting my addresses wrong, but I think this 30 Livingston was the, you know, you'll see the big stone wall right on the property line, and that was apparently the carriage house. So I'm imagining they dropped somebody off here, Mr. Howell would know, came around and, you know, parked these things back here. So actually the sewer line from this house goes through this house. So repair that. Another, you know, more buildings to it.
So I think it's interesting what Rob said about how the design you have now relates more to 191 rather than the existing house. And I think that's what probably has been bothering me about this, is that if it is part of the existing home, then why don't we see that relationship more? And you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I mean, basically it is, it's.
And I understand why you did it, because it's the way that lays out. It's the most kind of convenient, but I fear also that we are going to lose a lot of the sight and the beauty of this landscape because of these units being positioned the way they are. That's my comment.
And Javier, as you go into your drainage design, just want you to be aware that the code only allows gravel driveway in 1 and 2 family homes.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, the permeable driveway that's currently on the site of Mr. Howell's house, I mean, it looks like it's pretty successful. It's really, it's like concrete block with openings and it has gravel in there, correct? I mean, it looks successful. Is that?
Maybe successful, but it was not code compliant, and there was a big argument between myself and Mr. Kane, and the previous building inspector had approved it, but it won't happen again.
Okay.
All right. So that was, that's not fully vetted. We'll look into something. Obviously, we have to maintain this porosity. And we don't want asphalt. So we'll find something.
A permeable paver would be nice.
Okay. The thought is also to have ground source heating in these units.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Javier?
That our intention is to have ground source or geo exchange systems on each one of these, which would be buried under the drive.
Geothermal heat?
Yeah. And possible solar panels up above. So will it be, net zero, but the idea is to really be very sustainable in waterways. And also the water retention on the roof in these patio areas, if possible.
Well, anything else tonight?
Steve, I'm not hearing you.
I'm sorry.
Spaceship is launching.
Javier, how are we going to help us be able to visualize this better? I mean, what
well, we would, so I think what the comments I've gotten are very helpful, in terms of just sort of general, it's really design issues. So these are strictly a planning exercise. It looks like there was a real design intention, but that's not so much. So really, the similarities between this, some of the heights, what it looks like from different sides. We build a 3D model, it's already started, but we sort of set it aside, just because we're looking for, some direction if this townhouse approach is acceptable. So I think, all these are very good points, and I would kind of, I know that we would come back to you with something to help you understand what these things look like, what they look like from the street and from, from all sides.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Chairman, we do have somebody with their hand raised.
Okay. This is a pre-submission conference.
Who is it?
Kevin Cooper, he's the property management agent from 191 Broadway.
I think you would have to wait until we have a public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's whistling?
So I think that's Steve's computer, but
Oh,
does somebody want to make a motion to continue the pre-submission?
I make a motion to continue the pre-submission.
I second.
All in favor?
aye.
So Javier, if you could stop sharing the screen, then we can see everybody.
Oh, okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. All right. All in favor? of continuing the pre-submission? Okay, good.
Okay, now we move on to the highlights of our evening. MDR2 zone, continuation of discussion on possible zoning code changes. Anybody hear that?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Did you put 156 Palisade Street off to the end or this position?
I thought, and maybe Stephen, Rob can correct me, but I thought we were going to do this first and then have Patty come on after that.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yes, that gives Patty a chance. We sent Patty the draft earlier today so that he could look at it and he could give us his critique based on, in the context of his proposal.
Right.
That I think is productive.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is, if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. And
Hey, Jennifer, is Patty there? Is he in a holding position somewhere?
Patty is here. Yes.
Okay, well, he should see this.
Okay. Patty, pay
So-
attention.
so you all can see this?
Huh?
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm going to do almost all of this very quickly, because the truth is, while what we've sort of added is important, 90% of what's in this is what we saw last time, and you all have seen it in advance. So I'm not going to burn a lot of time. It's going to be mostly review, and I'm going to highlight the things that have changed. And you know, this is like, again, a joint effort between me and Steve Brosnahan and Ayer, and we had great help from Ed Manley, who, you know, more than any of us has lived the good, the bad, and the ugly of the code, and was super helpful in helping us kind of pull this together. So as you all will remember, we had had what we considered 4 elements of street character. There's now a 5th, massing and coverage. And I want to say that one of the things that we don't have to resolve tonight, but that is a kind of a blurry line, obviously, is which of these things are quote unquote guidelines that require kind of, you know, aesthetic judgment by us and the AHRB and so on, and which of these things are hard and fast numerical standards that wind up in the code. For the moment, I have not tried to sort that out. The things that you see in item 5 here are, a lot of them have to do with those numerical standards. And many of those may leave the world of the street character guidelines and go and just wind up in the charts in the zoning. So the first idea that you will remember was this idea that there was sort of a layering on this street between public to private, and that one of the things that we observed in that was that you know, there's the public realm of the street and sidewalk, and then there's typically a setback of between 10 and 15 feet where there are other elements. Sometimes it's a stoop, sometimes it's landscaping, sometimes it's kind of a porch element that mediates between the scale of the main building behind and the sidewalk. And so we invented this idea, who knows if this will become a term of art in the guidelines or not, of this transition zone, which we were saying might be between 10 and 15 feet deep. And then we started to list over here on the upper left-hand part of the slide, the kinds of things, and you see here in the photographs, the kinds of things, intermediate and smaller scale things that tend to occupy that zone. So one thing that we would expect would be that a new building would also try to accomplish the same kind of transition. The second thing we looked at was the scale of the frontage. And we did an analysis. We looked at all of the buildings. We decided that this group that you see in this green line here, numbers 3 through 17, were pretty typical. There are a couple of outliers. sites 18 and 19 that you see there at the south end. Those are a little bit bigger. They're probably double lots, but we need to think about those. The site number 2, which is the one that the applicant is looking at, is also kind of an outlier in that sense. But we looked at these and we did a kind of analysis of comparing the lot width to the building frontage. And what we came up with was that, you know, the buildings range from 21 at the smallest to 40th at the largest. I know that averages are kind of problematical, but we kind of felt that, and this will turn up again in the massing guidelines, that generally speaking, the sort of primary volume, you know, a lot of these buildings are buildings that were built over time. So there's what is clearly the primary building, and then glommed onto it is the side addition, or the rear addition, or the front porch. But from doing this analysis, we felt that like 40 foot was a good kind of a maximum standard for the frontage of the main structure on the site. And we have a diagram coming up that'll show that and show that how that relates to the secondary volumes that might be added onto it. The third thing we noticed was that the street has a kind of a horizontal read. This is a montage in 2 pieces. The bottom is, you know, the southern half of the street. The upper image is the northern half of the street. The black lines that you see here are the match lines between them. And what we found was that if you kind of squinted it, what you see is that there tends to be sort of an expression line at the first floor, which is often kind of the tops of these secondary elements, the porches, the entrances, and things of that nature. And then there's also a kind of a horizontal line that corresponds to the top of the second story. Almost all the buildings are second story or 2-story buildings. There are a few 3-story buildings. And what we came out with, Ed went out and measured some of the buildings that we thought were kind of prototypical of the condition along here. And so in the last presentation where we had XX feet measured from XXX, we have now sort of settled on this idea that we should have 25 feet to the top of the second story. And then if there was going to be a 3rd story, that could be another 12 feet, but it would be behind a setback, or that 37 feet would be to the center line of a pitched roof. And we're going to talk in a moment about where we're measuring that from. We've been going back and forth between whether or not that's measured at the front property line or at the curb line. So this is a significant change, because even though most of the sites are not super steep, we've adopted the same approach that we had on Main Street, which is that the frontage that we're most concerned with is the one that faces Palisade Street. And so therefore, we're going to measure these heights from there. We're not going to do a thing where we average it on the 4 sides of the site. We're going to set an absolute number based on our principal concern, which how it looks next to its neighbors on Palisade Street. The 4th thing that we had come up with was this idea that the buildings typically are what we would call kind of punched window buildings, where you may have a lot of windows, but at the end, the mass of the facade of the building, there's enough solid wall there that that's what you read. And so we came up with this idea that in general, the total area of window openings should not exceed 50% of the total wall area of, again, this sort of primary volume. And now we get into the one thing that is really new here are the things that deal with massing and coverage. And here again, I'm not sure how much of this yet goes into the guidelines and how much of it goes into the zoning standards, but I'll show you what we came up with. And we did a series of diagrams that show what kind of, to try to illustrate how these guidelines would lay out in terms of the massing. So what you see here, for example, is this 10 to 15 foot transition zone, which could be landscaping, it could be a stoop, it could be an entry. What you also see is this idea of a 2-story building to the eave. of the pitched roof, or the two-story flat building where there's a setback to the third story. And these dashed lines indicate that the building could, once you manage this kind of frontage and the way it presents to the street, you could get more square footage constrained by other things like coverage. You could get more building area by building back into the site because these are deep sites. What we came up with finally, and we can still discuss this, and Ed can weigh in on this when I stop talking in a moment. We actually came up with this idea that the baseline coverage would be 40%, but that we would apply the kind of sliding scale idea for sites as they got larger and larger. So that the effect of that sliding scale is to reduce the coverage to something like 36 or 37, which was intuitively where we were kind of getting to on this site. Here are some drawings that show sort of typical frontage conditions for a 40-foot site, a 50-foot site, and an 80-foot site, which is like the one that the applicant has. And here again, you can see this idea of the idea that this primary volume is 40 feet in its maximum width. And then there would be something that might step back to get more floor area. Here we're showing a driveway to the parking condition in the back, which I'll talk about again in a moment. And again, you see this 10 to 15 foot transition zone in here for porches and entries and landscaping. I apologize that this next image is light because it's in pencil. I haven't inked it up yet. But these are two cross-section and front elevation diagrams that help clarify the height conditions. The bottom part of the drawing is for a flat roof building. The upper part of the drawing is for a pitched roof building. And so what you're seeing, the left-hand images are cross-sections. The right-hand images are the front elevation. So looking at the flat building on a more or less level site, you can see here this idea, this would be where you would enter at the first floor. The parking would actually either have to be underground or be surface parking in the rear yard. There's 25 feet here to a 5-foot setback before you can build that third floor. And the front elevation of that building, this is obviously just an outline, would again show that 2-story piece and the third floor on top. The other one we drew, the upper half of this sketch, is a slope site, more like the one that the applicant is coming before us with a pitched roof building. And here, and this is important, one of the things that we decided, we wrestled with this idea of whether or not you could have a low, even if it was a low story, a full story of parking below the building. And we came down against that. And so what we're suggesting again is that the parking needs to either be surface parking in the back or could be in a basement structure that is more than halfway below grade, so that you would never have more than 5 feet, more or less, to the front level. And this is very consistent to the first floor. And that's the thing that would be most consistent with the rest of the street. And again, you have the same 25 feet to the top of the second floor, and then another 12 feet to the center of a pitched roof. And of course, that could essentially be a full third floor because you could build out dormers. Here you are looking at the front elevation from Palisade Street. The dormer, as it is, for instance, in my house on Judson Avenue, could be virtually the width of or the length of the house. So that is essentially a full third story. But we feel like both of these elevations would present as buildings that are in scale with what currently is on Palisade Street. And the last slide, I'm sorry. the last slide is a very nice little 3D diagram that Steve Brosnahan did that was meant to give a better three-dimensional representational idea about how to measure the height. That's this image. We're showing a kind of slope site and this idea of kind of, well, in this case, Steve has drawn it as if we're measuring from the curb. We've been going back and forth about whether one measures it from the curb or measures it from the property line. But I think the important thing here is this idea of making primary the measurement from the front elevation, so that we don't get into a situation where the building suddenly starts to look much taller and much bigger than the adjacent buildings if the slope is going up. So with that said, I want to invite Ed and Steve Brosnahan and Ayer to weigh in on, this is not final, we're not altogether in agreement with everything, but if Steve or Ayer or Ed want to qualify in some ways things or disagree about some of the things that I've shown, then they should please go ahead and do that.
I don't have any comments about that, which I think is really wonderful. Thank you so much for putting that together, Rob. But I would just ask Ed to explain the sliding scale, because it's a little bit complicated, and I would appreciate just understanding how that works.
Yeah, that's me as well.
If I can mention something, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Rob?
Yes.
Yes.
And,
Yeah,
but I want to, but before Ayer,
go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to ask Ed to weigh in on the coverage and how that might work with the sliding scale.
Oh, perfect.
Well, to come up with the numbers that the original sliding scale was trying to produce, we determined that didn't work just by changing the percentage. It was skewed by different factors. So if we just take the set B1 and B2 coverage and then create a multiplier for each oversized lot. So the first multiplier, as you had before in your, was 0.82. So
Right.
if you were to set the B1 or B2 coverage by buildings in this zone at 40%, which I think is what you came up with for the 75 percentile. Is that correct?
I think it was in the high 30s. I'm trying to remember.
No, at 38.2, I think, about 0.8.
Yeah, it was close. You know, we could round up to 40.
Yeah.
So if you then multiply that by the 0.82, I think you come up with like about 33%.
Yeah.
So which is a good 6% higher than the 27 that it was in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you know, a respectable amount. And then as the lot gets bigger, the multiplier changes. So when the subject lot right now was between 7,500 and 10,000 square feet. So the multiplier was 0.82. As the lot gets bigger, you want to reduce more, you know, to keep in line the size of the building. And the multiplier in a 10 to 20,000 square foot lot becomes 0.75. And then a lot, you know, 20 to 40, 0.67. And then over 40, it becomes 0.56. So this way, as the lot gets bigger and bigger, you don't get to put this huge house or monster building on that large lot. It could brings it down to something that's more in line with the size of the houses in the zone. So that's it. That's basically it. It's just turns it into a multiplier of the existing set in the B1. Makes it simpler for everybody.
Jair, you had something. you
No,
wanted to say?
basically just wanted to thank you, Rob and Steve and Ed, about this commendable commitment and effort that you guys showed in this. And thank you for the presentation. I really enjoy the process and coming up with all these, let's say, guidelines. The two aspects that you were mentioned, the measuring from the curb line or from the property line, it's clearly to avoid, I don't think there is much of a difference. I think the curb line is more difficult to manipulate by an applicant, but that's something that we can, decide later. The goal is clearly to control the massing of the presence of the facade on the street. This idea of layering and the transition between the private and the public is something that is very predominant and or contextual of the street and the streetscape. I think is something that needs to be preserved. The only item that I not convinced about how to deal with is the parking, but it's something that needs exploring and understanding better. Something that to vary the parking or to have these entrances to the parking needs to be thought out properly and probably will be project specific, but thank you everybody. It's just, the presentation that Rob did is very clear and very looking forward for a further, proper discussion. The lot coverage, I agree with Ed, is in the 30s, 33% seems to be right in character with the street. So that's basically my few comments.
So in a way, if there are no other comments, we could go, because it's really all part of one discussion. If you want to hear from an applicant who's now presumably needs to deal with this, we could roll into what Patty would have to offer. And how do you all feel about that?
I think it's timely to.
Hey, I'm sorry that Alan is not with us because I'm sure that he's really interested in these sort of percentages and numbers, and hopefully he'll be able to join us for the next meeting and comment on this.
Yes.
Well, we set the agenda so that the applicant can now speak, and I'm sure has heard what's gone on here. So it'd be fine if we're ready for that, we should go with it. Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you rouse Mr.
Patty, can you raise your hand? Because I have you twice. Thank you. Patty, can you hear us?
Fell asleep.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's see if I can get the screen. And that, can you start to see stuff?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
We can see it.
Okay, great. First, I really appreciate the work that you guys are putting into this. I don't agree with everything, but I don't know that everybody on the team agrees with everything. So, there's some things I think that still need to be considered. And as Jair just mentioned, parking, I think, is a very critical thing. And I'm not sure how we want to deal with that. But what I'd like to do is just kind of go through this presentation. And I think I have some information that's actually ideally it'll be helpful to you guys too. You've already seen where the site is. You know the houses that we're dealing with, these three. The site that we're working on right now is the one in the middle. But you know, one of the big concerns that we're dealing with is how we relate to the two houses adjacent. And I just want to point out that in this photo, that issue with the sloping site, the diagram that Rob drew is calmer than what we have here. We're actually 14 feet higher than the curb level at the back of the building. So it's a substantial change. It's not something that a 5-foot grade works itself out, but we can see where that goes. So this is what you saw a while back, and this is what we're offering as the concept of that front portion that relates to the street. This is the piece of the building that we've got that comes, it has a 10-foot setback. And then of course, what we're looking at is the fact that as you get back further on the building, another 12 feet or so back, so you'd be 22 feet back from the site, you get these parts of the building, and then above it steps back again. So it's doing that setback, but of course, everything I'm showing here is predicated on the idea that we have parking under the building. But I think we can get to that in a sec. We've already talked all about this. We don't need to go over it. You know, we come out with a higher number. If you wanted to have 75% of the buildings on the street compliant, we're at 47.64. But you know, that's all can get worked out. Kind of very similar to what you're thinking is what we've been looking at in this, which is how do we create a building that fits in with the neighborhood character, obviously height, massing, the setbacks, how much of the width facing the street is solid wall, how do we relate to the street life, porches, landscaping, everything you guys have identified. But the one that we kind of pull out as being something that's really significant here is parking. And the location of the driveway, and whether you have a door facing the street and whether you have an open parking lot in the back or something like that, I think a lot more thought has to be given to that, because these properties on Palisade back up to Main Street, and that area between the buildings that are the backyards of those two streets, that's actually a pretty special space that's very useful in a relatively highly developed area. So I think we don't want to just be nonchalant and just say, well, we turn that into open parking lots. I think that would be a real unfortunate direction to go. If there is parking on this site, it needs to be at street level, because the terrain of the parking, lifting it up, well, it just that's what happens. Our requirement is 9 spaces. Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, as though you wouldn't already, but my understanding is we have 3 curbside spaces for the existing property. So what we need to provide is 6 off-street spaces. So we have made a change. We've taken that as our lowest common denominator, and we use the fact that we could fit 6 off-street spaces while respecting the side yards, front yard, and rear yard. We could fit the 6 spaces in a garage underneath the building. So we've looked at how to deal with the height. We're not dealing with any new height measurement. We're working with what the code says now, with the idea that we have to have 30 feet from the existing grade to the flat roof. The setbacks, we have the front yard setback at 10 feet. The prevailing is actually 7.8. Side yards, we're proposing 10.08 feet where 10 is required. The rear yard setback, we've proposed the 25 feet as that's what it is now. And that's to the parking area, not to the back of our building. Our building is another 20 feet further away. So we actually have 45 feet from the back of the building to the property line. The big issue, of course, is building coverage. What we have proposed is 39.99%. And that's, of course, where the limit now is 27. Site coverage, we're at 57.8, where the current limit is 54. One thing I just wanted to point out is building height right now in the code. This is something that you guys might be looking at already. The way that we measure height, or we're supposed to, with what the words say in the code, is the maximum height is of a structure in feet shall be measured perpendicularly from the existing grade to the imaginary plane locating the permitted number of feet above and parallel to the existing grade. Now, I don't know how that works when you have a sloped site and you're doing a flat roof, because you don't want to have a pitched flat roof, right? So, you know, that's something that needs to be worked out. But right now, what we're showing, if we're not already in compliance, we're very close to it with what those limits are. This is something that you guys are doing. We've done the same thing. Go down the street and measure what the fronts of these kinds of buildings are, which is more consistent with the kind of building that we're proposing. You've seen this diagram before. I still think that should be governing a lot of the thinking in this, but it doesn't really pertain to what we're trying to do at the moment. What we did do a while back, but I don't know that we ever got around to showing it because we thought we had a direction we wanted to go, was we looked at different different concepts of how you'd approach this. We've modified it, given the thought and the concern with coverages, reducing it to 6 cars and keeping it at 6 apartments. So we've looked at what happens if we have a driveway coming into the front of the building with 6 spaces, entrance on the side. We've looked at basically the same orientation of a building. This is a building that's 45 feet wide, 6 garage spaces with a driveway coming in on the side of the building. This is an arrangement that I think is really complicated and something that I think you got to be a pretty good driver to make those turns and make it work. It's not impossible, but it's a little tricky. It also favors the driveway on the north side, which I think would be preferable because the building that's adjacent to that is up so high, it would not be bothered by this. But what it does do is it means that we're ending up with some pretty good sized retaining walls because at the end of that driveway, we're right now about 14 feet below street level or above street level. So it would be high structure. We kind of looked at what, that kind of a massing would be. And this, as Javier said earlier, these are not designs. This is not intended to be anything we're thinking anything would look like. But it just gives when we look at these different diagrams, it gives us an understanding of the kind of massing components that we have. So then we looked at one of, if we have one part of the building, up towards the street and the stairs and the elevator kind of set back, and then the driveway goes back so that the door is further away from the street. Still keeping that, this is a little bit easier to do, and it's certainly further from the house next door. And again, how the massing of that can kind of set back in. Again, we have fairly good size retaining walls because of the yard, but it's not as bad as the other one. And then this is actually very close to where we've ended up, where we have the garage coming in on the side, the parking underneath the building, the balcony decks on the side flanking the middle, and a massing where you've got, I think in a way, Rob, if you ignore the fact that we've got parking under the building, this is fairly similar to what you were drawing, where you've got a 2-story element here, and then the 3rd story sets back both above and on the sides. We're setting back further than you had. We're actually going back 12 feet on the sides, or a little bit more than that, almost 14 maybe. So we've got a setback to the front of an 8-foot deep porch, which could actually be pretty interesting in the way it could be detailed. Maybe it has a cover on the top, I don't know. And then I think at the last meeting or the one before that, Dwight mentioned something of what if you'd subdivided the lot and split them in 2. And we actually tried to do that, but it very quickly morphed into, well, we don't want to have 2 sets of stairs and elevators. So if we had one building here and one building here with the stairs and elevator shared between the 2, how that could kind of break down the massing. And, that ends up with something where, you do get a different read, and, maybe this top level would step back in or something. So there are things that can be done, but those are the 4 that we looked at. And what we never did, and you guys noted that we were kind of remiss in this, is we never showed you what an as of right worked out to be. And I'll just start from the beginning. The problem we have with the as of right is we end up with apartments that are effectively probably ending up less than 1,000 square feet each, which, and we're cutting the number of units down to 6, penciling out the building with the costs and stuff. It's hard to make that work with like 6 one-bedroom apartments. So we would like it, we do want to go further with the size, the coverage, so we can make that work. But I still felt it was helpful. This is the building, that's 26.83%, so it's right under the 27%. The trick is this is not big enough to put the parking underneath. So if we did parking in this or something, and then extend it out in the back, maybe we could hide the parking under, but we just took the direction because that's what's been talked about, that you have this long driveway, you come into the back. If we fit 5 parking spaces, the one thing we wanted to point out here is our impervious coverage starts to get bigger, where we're around 57% with the parking under the building. We start getting up around 64.5% with the impervious coverage if we have a parking lot that's behind the building. And of course, pointing out that all of these properties around that are right now looking into backyards. You're right, when you were just taking us through your study and you showed the 2 multifamily houses that are down near 75 Main, they do have that parking in the back. But I don't know, that's something to take a really good look at, because I don't know that that's what we want to say we're trying to encourage people to do. So, again, going through with the as of right, this is, the base of the building. We've, in this building with the site and the grades that we have right here, you can see, here's the existing topography of the site. So what we're dealing with here is where we actually have to cut this down to be able to fit a floor level above the lower level. But what I think should be of interest is that with that below and the 3 levels with 2 apartments each above in a pitched roof building, we end up with a pretty tall building as of right. This is what that massing looks like with the pitched roof. This is, in fact, this is even this is further from, this is less high than the code really permits. We went to the base and we go midpoint of 40 feet. This is what you end up with on that. So that's what the current code permits. I saw that you're proposing reducing that. I've always thought that, as you described it at one point in one of the earlier meetings, that the midpoint of the roof and a flat roof, it shouldn't be so divergent that you get 30 feet of height with a flat roof, but I could go 47 feet high with a pitched roof. It doesn't seem to really be a good ratio. Okay, so now we're into what we've proposed and what we're thinking is a good solution for this, although obviously that's our opinion. This is the driveway coming in, 6 parking spaces under the building, a front entranceway that comes in, elevator and staircase. We have a garbage storage here that's concealed under these porches on the side, so you don't really notice that from the street. The porches, I think, could be detailed in a way to be one of the features. This blows that up a little bit so we can see it better. And this, of course, is that 10-foot zone that you guys have identified. The way this is drawn in here with a hatch rectangle is obviously not developed, but the 10 feet could be developed as a very nice landscaped area that would really be, a nice space to walk through. There could be benches or, some kind of, street furniture related onto the property for the people living there, and it adds to street life. And one thing I do want to point out, I think whatever we're doing with these properties, extending the street trees, I think, is a critical thing. I realize that we have wires and problems and all that, but I don't think we have wires on this side of the street. So I think we could do some decent trees in there. Now, what we've done is we've kind of picked up that idea as you were describing it. We've got that 10-foot zone, and then we've got a 13-foot or 12.75 foot on the sides that we step back, which has the porches in it and kind of conceals the entrance to the garbage storage and the entrance to the garage. So when you look at the garage door, it's not a factor fronting in the, on the face of the building. It's recessed back in, which I think softens it quite a lot. This is the, the real public zone. So you get those 3 layers in the way we've got to set up. But what I'm thinking we want to do is also pay attention to these layers. And this is, if either this could be, if people push it and say, well, you can't, we're not including this area as building area. We have no building above this. We could build this as a retaining wall and we'd have the 4 parking spaces open aired. I would think it would be better to put a green roof on top, at which point we could have a really nice backyard again. And of course, treating this 2 10.58 foot side yards, I think is something that landscape properly has a lot to do with how you soften the relationship to the adjacent homes. We've got, the charts that we've done all this where here's where we're showing the impervious coverage is 57.8% as we proposed, and the building coverage is 39.99%. This is just the sections, and then obviously we haven't laid out apartments and all, but figuring out how that all fits together. Real simple massing diagrams with punched windows and horizontal, which we've had actually, this elevation I think we've had since maybe February. So I think that works in with a lot of the things that you were talking about in terms of the facade composition with the horizontal lines and the punctures of the windows. I think we all share the sensibility of that. And so we end up with this building, with this piece being what is forward, these porches sheltering that. If we wanted more here with a roof on it to soften it more, we can do that. This sets back and gives the, a roof deck for the top 2 apartments, which I think is just a nice piece for this. And then we had someone put together a SketchUp. I want to point out that this SketchUp model is not in the right place. They positioned the front of this even with the back of the sidewalk. This sets in another 10 feet. So there would be you've got the sidewalk and all this. They've got some, it's really not clear to me. It's almost like it's built at an angle. So we need to get that clarified with these renderings. But the idea of the massing and how they set up and how big does the building actually look from the street. My personal feeling is if you step these things back this way, it's doing quite a bit of softening what the apparent massing is. And, we're back further than the neighbors to the side. So I think that is a good step with this. That's how we've approached it. The part we have in the front is 27.5 feet wide. That wasn't because we think that's a maximum. I agree with you that 30s up to 40 should work, but this is what tended to work for us with the way this thing kind of felt. Also, they drew this frontal on here. This is recessed the same as that is. So you wouldn't see the doors up here in the front. And of course, that shows that this is 31.5 feet measured from the sidewalk to the roof deck on here. I realize that's 1.5 feet above that level, but this same plane right now on the seat, on the site is about 4 feet above this level. So if we're measuring the way that you're supposed to measure right now in the code, this height here would actually be, 4 feet less than that. So we would be under the 30 feet. And as we step back, the contour of the site steps back with us. So when we get back to this flat roof in the back, we're 30 feet above the grade that is at that part of the site. Here, and I'm almost done with this. In fact, I think 2 slides. This is putting the flat roof building compared to the as of right building with the height. And where we could get it 48.5 feet, it would be an as of right, 48.5 feet wide. Our total building width of the flat roof would be 55.5. And that's to the top of the parapet. I know we only have to measure to the flat roof, but I don't want to be doing what I'm seeing happen on other projects where the goal is to make that parapet disappear so the building doesn't look as tall. I think there's a proportional relationship above the windows that just makes the building not look right. I thought 41 Cedar Street was much better when it actually had the height of the parapets on the top. And then the front part is 27.5 and 34.5 to the top of the parapet. And I think that's everything we've got.
Thank you.
You're muted, Rob, if you're trying to talk.
Did you go back to the as of right proposals?
That's the site plan. You want to see the elevations, or what is it you want to look at?
Right, and then the elevation.
Oops, I'm going the wrong way.
You had a pitched roof version, right?
Yeah, this is all pitched roof. I mean, right now the code favors the pitched roof building because you're allowed 40 feet to the midpoint of the roof.
So all that's going to change, Patty. You yourself were the one who suggested that the limits and everything in this zone were not right, not thought out when the code changed. And
absolutely,
and, people are working on that now. So it's most likely going to be measured from the curb, and it's at 37 feet with the setback, and most likely. So why don't you try a possible as of right measuring from there, and going with 33% coverage instead of mixing up as of right from the old, and then from the height that somehow wording got messed up in the code by some change. I don't remember when it was, but it used to be grade plane, and then somebody dropped off the plane, and now it just says measure from grade, which doesn't make sense in anybody's mind. So
Agreed.
this will be from the curb. Try something with the 33%, and then if you have parking outside, go with something pervious so you could get under that.
The objection to the parking outside is really that we end up with everybody looking out at parking lots behind the building. I think that's something that we should be trying to avoid doing. If we can put the cars under the building,
Well,
it's a
we
much
do
better thing.
it in a lot of places with the parking behind the buildings, and then we buffer it with landscaping. And that's another thing I'd like to just throw my 2 cents in. If you want to add trees, add them on your lot, not on the sidewalk. I don't want to see trees tearing up sidewalks.
I appreciate your perspective, but I also come from a different world where every effort is to get the street trees in. So we'll do whatever you're telling us to do with the street trees. We could certainly put them on the property, but when I think of how do you make a street like Palisade Street nicer, is you add street trees. You also put the wires underground. The challenge I have with 33%, I mean, this is showing the size of the units, and those are gross areas. That's including all of the wall thicknesses. So when you're really talking of the size of these units, you're down under 1,000 square feet, and you're down up here, you're down probably at around maybe 800 square feet. I wouldn't have a problem at all with those as a mix. If we had, 2 or 3 small apartments and then, 3 or 4 bigger apartments. But having all of them small apartments just doesn't really make this an economically viable project. 33% is, where you end up with the size that really makes sense with the garage under the building. I understand that's not something you're in favor of, but putting that under the building, we're at that 39.99% with a green roof. And I think there's a lot of merit to it. I mean, I don't get to vote and I don't get to do anything except advocate, but I am advocating for what I think is the best solution for this site.
I mean, one thing that we're kind of moving towards after looking at, spending a lot of time looking at Palisade Street is a building that's 3 stories max, which could either be 2 and then a setback to a 4th flat roof, or 2 and then an eave pitched roof with dormers, something like that. Whereas almost everything that you're showing is essentially 4 stories.
Well, what I end up with as a problem is that this is one of 2 properties on the street that have, the other being the corner 164. I think Steve Brosnahan commented at the last meeting is that these are unusual in the fact of how high they pitch up in the back. We're again, here in this section, you can see that we're 100% buried with the topography, you know, we're below grade with this basement. You know, this is except unfortunately on the front. If this was the street,
that's what we're really most concerned with. And I guess what I'm wondering is, why can't you do similar to what we tried to put in the sketch? Why can't the basement parking, if you want to do that, be underground enough so that it reads like the kind of porch elevation that you see up and down Palisade Street? Because there's no, except for that building on the corner, which is, you know, an old historic building, the ground floor, there isn't a single building along the length of Palisades, regardless of its size, where the ground floor of the building is parking.
Agreed. But I also have a couple of times now started off the concept that we were going to do a building that we would not be putting parking on the site because we've got parking lots across the street. We tried to do that at 100 Main, and we originally tried to do that here. But both times we were convinced by the comments from this board, as well as others, that we had to put the parking on site. So if we're putting parking on site, we can put it behind the building and have that be what affects all of the apartments that are on Main Street, the apartments next door. When the woman that I know who lives on the 3rd floor next door had me come up into her apartment and take photographs, the thing that she pointed out being most important to her was that when she looked out her windows into the backyard, it would still be that green zone. So us putting parking there, I do not think that's a wonderful idea. Maybe putting it underground and maybe having this idea that if the parking is underground, it doesn't count into the site coverage. I think Ed had the concern that if you do it and you don't respect the setbacks, then you're encroaching in other ways to neighbors. But if we respected the setbacks and we had the parking all underground, you know, maybe if it moved back further, we'd be able to get this to come down. But here's the curb. And the first thing that George Palmer is going to tell me is that he doesn't want us sloping down right from here and have people coming up at a ramp and arriving on the sidewalk when the first time they can see pedestrians as they're coming out of that ramp. There's going to want to be something where we're pitching down here, and maybe by the time we get to back here, we can put that all below grade, but it's not going to work in that front area where the driveway is.
Patty, I'm sorry to interrupt. Couldn't you have a situation, it's so funny, I'm using my cursor to be on your drawing, and of course, no one can see that. Isn't there a scenario, why couldn't the parking be kind of half in the underground parking be in the back half of the building so that the front half of the building on the sidewalk was programmed living space of one kind or another, so that what you were looking at was not, even though I know you dressed it up and you have some windows and you have a kind of entry lobby into the elevator core and so on, you know, why wouldn't it be possible for the ground level to be, you know, a little bit up maybe, and to look like living space that is part of the, because that's much more typical of what you find up and down Palisade Street.
It is.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Patty, just answer.
No, I think I understand what you're saying. Another thing we're trying to do here, and it's probably because several years ago when I had to go in for a laminectomy, I think Steve Hunter, you were the only one that was on the planning board when I had to come and make a presentation, kneeling on a cushion, leaning on an exercise ball. And Ed Plotkin said, I like you in that position. So I'm trying to do this in a way that all of the units are ADA compliant. So somebody coming in from the street in a wheelchair, crutches, having difficulties walking, is able to come in and get to an elevator and go up to their apartment.
But you could access that from the back, right? You could get to the elevator. You don't have to. You could have a situation where that first floor is 2 or 3 or 4 feet off the sidewalk level. And as you go up the site on the side driveway, you come around to an entrance that takes you to the elevator line.
Yeah, I think that was actually that was the first design that we had, and you guys didn't like it.
Well, we may have liked it, not liked it for other reasons. I mean, that may have still been in the world when we just had a building that just felt overall too big and too out of character.
Okay, because what we had at one point was we've had a design that had the driveway on one side and the entrance on the other, which, you know, that actually, in fact, that was one of these diagram things. I guess it's this way. The first diagram that we had was, it was not this one. We had a driveway coming in on one side and the entrance coming in on the other side. And, you know, with that kind of configuration, this space, you know, maybe we don't have 6 units anymore. We get some consideration for the fact that we wouldn't have 7 parking spaces unless we're going back further or something. And this could actually be a ground floor apartment on the front of the building. At that point, we'd be cutting it to here, I guess, is with what you're saying, and sliding back. We'd have to see, you know, we don't have windows on 3 sides of this building. So this ground floor is a basement. So we're not getting the unit of 2 units that are 1,000 square feet on a floor don't work with this being the level of the apartment. It needs to come up, and at that point,
unless that unit is a 2-story unit, like, you know, an L, right? A unit, basically a level and a half, right?
Yeah, but I still end up, if I'm cutting the building at this point, where this is 1, 2, 3, and you don't have this top on, then you're talking of 4 units in here, and 1 of them or 2 of them are a duplex. But I don't know.
But Paddy, one question for you. You mentioned to us that there is an economical, a financial issue that you claim that the building doesn't work with less than that. Where are those numbers coming from? And what's the basis of those arguments?
Yeah, I don't know if Michael.
Wait.
Yeah, I don't think Michael. I don't think Michael's. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just because there are claims that are thrown to us like. Let's start by saying that all we're trying to do is to recognize the qualities or the contextual qualities that they create this streetscape that is Palisades, and we're trying to protect and the sensibilities that or the
absolutely. I guess the difference.
Yeah, but the difference is that you're pointing to the wrong types. The 3 buildings that you're showing are not the buildings that they give the character to Palisades. It's the wrong buildings. You're showing that's all good, but that building could be, I don't know. If I see this building with the materials, with the colors, with the textures, even the massing, is totally foreign to, if I see, even the street that you choose, even the SketchUp is not Palisade. There is something
This
very
is-
foreign to Palisade.
Except this does come from a building that was removed when they did the parking lot across the street that looked very much like this.
Whatever it is, it feels like very foreign to me. All I'm trying to say is we are trying to recognize this, what we were talking, the historical layer, the slope, the horizontality, the facade composition, the massing, etc., that are issues that are that we are recognizing that are worth preserving.
I do not disagree. I just disagree that we're not
then,
accomplishing that.
So then there is the issue of massing. There is the issue that the lot coverage and the issues of, and we are trying to solve here a two-bedroom apartments when we have bigger issues to deal with, which is how do we make this building or this application to be compliant with contextual principles. It seems not convincing to me the way it is now. There is something broken the way it is. If you put that rendering in the context of the street, you will see it yourself. It's not. I understand that it's not designed yet, and I understand there's a lot of work
building,
to it.
This image shows a building that's more designed. I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't choose the railings, the detailing.
I understand.
Or the color.
It's a preliminary design, but.
Right, but in my opinion, this does fit in nicely with that street. Okay. And this is not foreign, and this is not Illinois or whatever that meant.
No. I'm just saying that it's kind of against what our walkthroughs and with Rob and Steve and Ed, we were trying to accomplish and we're trying to recognize, and it's very well established in the guideline. Or let's not call it guidelines, in this memo that we prepared.
The guideline that you're working on, which I think is a good thing and fits in with the intent of having guidelines, all comes off of our vision plan. And the village's vision plan had certain ideas about what happened over here. And this is a place where we should be creating more apartments. This is a place where
why? Why?
Because we desperately need more places for people to live. We desperately need more tax base in our village.
Well, those are issues that I like to discuss it at a different level, not at this level, because you're not designing. If we are talking about density or parking, for argument's sake, parking is not the basis to design.
There's been a suggestion that we end this meeting at 11 o'clock, which is 3 minutes. I think we're going around and around.
I would agree, and I think
there's lots of stuff to discuss about this. I think that, in my personal opinion, Patty has to appreciate the work we've done on this and really understand what we're after here and sort of reconsider his proposal. And we can either set a special meeting, is in my opinion, and Steve Hunter has to, agree with this, or we can just talk about this at the next planning board meeting. But
I think setting a meeting at some point would really be good. We'll be available whenever it's good for you. I'd definitely like Michael Lang to be there, because Ayer's questions, really, those aren't questions to me, those are to Michael. He's got money invested in this. This is what they do. They're investors in developing property. And I do believe, and I know, Ayer, you have more experience in this perhaps than I do, but it's, there are numbers that really matter in what you can do. And
so can I just say, I think, first of all, Patty, I appreciate all the work you did. I would say the thing that I would like to do now, and if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. Yeah, I would actually like to now pretend that the guidelines that we wrote are the new zone constraints, and try maximizing the site with those constraints.
Yeah, I should have said it, but when you said that earlier, definitely, I think that makes perfect sense.
I don't know if you want to do it or if you want us to do it, to sort of
Me.
kind of show, okay,
You know, my collaborative approach to things, I'd love to have you and I do it.
okay.
Because that way we'd be able to short circuit some of the mistakes that I could make. You could just tell me why something doesn't work. I think if we work together on it, that could be very instrumental in us understanding this better.
Well, why don't we take a kind of independent swipe at it first,
Sure.
just very, very quickly, and compare notes. And then we can, at the next meeting, because I agree we should wrap this up, at the next meeting, we can sort of compare. I will say that, and unfortunately, as you know, not everyone on the planning board is of the same mind. I do think that the parking thing is an issue. And I think that I think the idea behind these guidelines is they establish a kind of a baseline. And then there's always the idea that if somebody comes in with a building that is exceptionally beautiful, or that is 50% affordable housing, or that has some other quality that comports with the vision plan and that people would like to see, then I would like to think that some of these things, even some of the massing things, but certainly the parking things, could be debated. So, but the first thing is to just see, okay, well, if the guidelines that we've come up with were the law of the land, what does that produce? And do we like what that produces? And then that can be the baseline from which other negotiations around other values take place. So why don't we agree that the next step is we're going to test on this site with the real grades. I'll get them from you, Patty. I just had trouble locating how it actually plays out, and use that as the basis for the next meeting, next discussion.
Okay, we are really interested in trying to get to a public hearing, which I know every step we take with this, it doesn't seem like we get closer with it. I'll have to talk with Michael about that, because I know, they've invested, they've bought this property, and they would like to be doing something. But at the same time, I understand, as Ed pointed out earlier, I was the one that pointed out I thought the numbers were wrong on the street. So we need to fix those, and I don't get to pick the numbers that they should be, where it should be. Yeah, let's, you and I share that stuff and see what we can work up for the next meeting.
Okay.
I'm available for any discussion.
Good, that'd be great.
Okay, Steve?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, tonight. It was a very interesting and I think very useful session, and I think it's great.
Good.
I move we adjourn. Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor, go home.
All right.
We are home.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Of course.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer.